ch9 VLANs Virtual LANs CCNA 3 version 3.0. Overview. We will not cover all of the slides in this presentation, as we have covered much of this in previous presentations. Define VLANs. List the benefits of VLANs. Explain how VLANs are used to create broadcast domains. Explain how routers are used for communication between VLANs. List the common VLAN types. Define ISL and 802.1q. Explain the concept of geographic VLANs. Configure static VLANs on 29xx series catalyst switches. Verify and save VLAN configurations. Delete VLANs from a switch configuration. Rick Graziani at cabrillo.edu. VLAN introduction. VLANs provide segmentation based on broadcast domains. VLANs logically segment switched networks based on the functions, project themes, or applications of the organization regardless of the physical location or connections to the network. All workstations and servers used by a particular work group share the same VLAN, regardless of the physical connection or location. Rick Graziani at cabrillo.edu. VLAN introduction. VLANs are created to provide segmentation services traditionally provided by physical routers in LAN configurations. VLANs address scalability, security, and network management. Routers in VLAN topologies provide broadcast filtering, security, and traffic flow management. Switches may not bridge any traffic between VLANs, as this would violate the integrity of the VLAN broadcast domain. Traffic should only be routed between VLANs. Rick Graziani at cabrillo.edu. Broadcast domains with VLANs and routers. Broadcast domains with VLANs and routers. A VLAN is a broadcast domain created by one or more switches. The network design above creates three separate broadcast domains. Rick Graziani at cabrillo.edu. Broadcast domains with VLANs and routers. 10.0.0.08. 2. With or without VLANs. 10.1.0.016. 1. Without VLANs. 10.2.0.016. 10.3.0.016. 1. No VLANs, or in other words, one VLAN. Single IP network. 2. With or without VLANs. However, this can be an example of no VLANs. In both examples, each group, switch, is on a different IP network. 3. Using VLANs. Switches configured with the ports on the appropriate VLAN. What are the broadcast domains in each? 1 link per VLAN or a single VLAN trunk. Later. 10.1.0.016. 1. With VLANs. 10.2.0.016. 10.3.0.016. Rick Graziani at cabrillo.edu. VLAN operation. Each switch port can be assigned to a different VLAN. Ports assigned to the same VLAN share broadcasts. Ports that do not belong to that VLAN do not share these broadcasts. Rick Graziani at cabrillo.edu. VLAN operation. Static membership VLANs are called port-based and port-centric membership VLANs. As a device enters the network, it automatically assumes the VLAN membership of the port to which it is attached. The default VLAN for every port in the switch is the management VLAN. The management VLAN is always VLAN 1 and may not be deleted. This statement does not give the whole story. We will examine management, default and other VLANs at the end. All other ports on the switch may be reassigned to alternate VLANs. More on VLAN 1 later. Rick Graziani at cabrillo.edu. VLAN operation. Important notes on VLANs. VLANs are assigned on the switch port. There is no VLAN assignment done on the host, usually. In order for a host to be a part of that VLAN, it must be assigned an IP address that belongs to the proper subnet. Remember, VLAN equals subnet. Rick Graziani at cabrillo.edu. VLAN operation. Dynamic membership VLANs are created through network management software, not as common as static VLANs. Cisco Works 2000 or Cisco Works for switched internetworks is used to create dynamic VLANs. Dynamic VLANs allow for membership based on the MAC address of the device connected to the switch port. As a device enters the network, it queries a database within the switch for a VLAN membership. Rick Graziani at cabrillo.edu. Benefits of VLANs. If a hub is connected to VLAN port on a switch, all devices on that hub must belong to the same VLAN. The key benefit of VLANs is that they permit the network administrator to organize the LAN logically instead of physically. Note, can be done without VLANs, but VLANs limit the broadcast domains. This means that an administrator is able to do all of the following. Easily move workstations on the LAN. Easily add workstations to the LAN. Easily change the LAN configuration. Easily control network traffic. Improve security. Rick Graziani at cabrillo.edu. Without VLANs, no broadcast control. ARP request. Without VLANs, the ARP request would be seen by all hosts. Again, consuming unnecessary network bandwidth and host processing cycles. Rick Graziani at cabrillo.edu. With VLANs, broadcast control. Switch port, VLAN ID. ARP request. Rick Graziani at cabrillo.edu. VLAN types. Rick Graziani at cabrillo.edu. MAC address-based VLANs. MAC address-based VLANs. Rarely implemented. Rick Graziani at cabrillo.edu. VLAN tagging. VLAN tagging is used when a link needs to carry traffic for more than one VLAN. Trunk link. As packets are received by the switch from any attached end station device, a unique packet identifier is added within each header. This header information designates the VLAN membership of each packet. The packet is then forwarded to the appropriate switches or routers based on the VLAN identifier and MAC address. Upon reaching the destination node, switch, the VLAN ID is removed from the packet by the adjacent switch and forwarded to the attached device. Packet tagging provides a mechanism for controlling the flow of broadcasts and applications while not interfering with the network and applications. This is known as a trunk link or VLAN trunking. Rick Graziani at cabrillo.edu. VLAN tagging. No VLAN tagging. VLAN tagging. VLAN tagging is used when a single link needs to carry traffic for more than one VLAN. Rick Graziani at cabrillo.edu. VLAN tagging. 802.10. There are two major methods of frame tagging: Cisco Proprietary Inter-Switch Link (ISL) and IEEE 802.1q. ISL used to be the most common, but is now being replaced by 802.1q frame tagging. Cisco recommends using 802.1q. VLAN tagging and trunking will be discussed in the next chapter. Rick Graziani at cabrillo.edu. Two types of VLANs: end-to-end or campus-wide VLANs. Geographic or local VLANs. Rick Graziani at cabrillo.edu. End-to-end or campus-wide VLANs. End-to-end or campus-wide VLANs. Rick Graziani at cabrillo.edu. Geographic or local VLANs. Geographic or local VLANs. Rick Graziani at cabrillo.edu. End-to-end or campus-wide VLANs. End-to-end or campus-wide VLANs. End-to-end or campus-wide VLANs. Same VLAN/subnet no matter what the location is on the network. Trunking at the core. Usually not recommended by Cisco or other vendors. Adds complexity to network administration. Does not resolve layer 2 spanning tree issues. Used to be recommended but routing at the core was considered too slow. Rick Graziani at Cabrillo.edu. End-to-end or campus-wide VLANs. End-to-end or campus-wide VLANs. The core layer router is being used to route between subnets, VLANs. The network is engineered, based on traffic flow patterns, to have 80% of the traffic contained within a VLAN. The remaining 20% crosses the router to the enterprise servers and to the internet and WAN. Note, this is known as the 80-20 rule. With today's traffic patterns, this rule is becoming obsolete. Rick Graziani at Cabrillo.edu. Geographic or local VLANs. Geographic or local VLANs. Geographic or local VLANs. More common. Routing at the core. Different VLAN/subnet depending upon location. Rick Graziani at Cabrillo.edu. Geographic or local VLANs. As many corporate networks have moved to centralize their resources, end-to-end VLANs have become more difficult to maintain. Users are required to use many different resources, many of which are no longer in their VLAN. Because of this shift in placement and usage of resources, VLANs are now more frequently being created around geographic boundaries rather than commonality boundaries. Rick Graziani at Cabrillo.edu. Geographic or local VLANs. Geographic or local VLANs. This geographic location can be as large as an entire building or as small as a single switch inside a wiring closet. In a VLAN structure, it is typical to find the new 20/80 rule in effect. 80% of the traffic is remote to the user and 20% of the traffic is local to the user. Although this topology means that the user must cross a layer 3 device in order to reach 80% of the resources, this design allows the network to provide for a deterministic, consistent method of accessing resources. Rick Graziani at Cabrillo.edu. Configuring static VLANs. Configuring static VLANs. The following guidelines must be followed when configuring VLANs on Cisco 29xx switches. The maximum number of VLANs is switch dependent. 29xx switches commonly allow 4095 VLANs. VLAN 1 is one of the factory default VLANs. VLAN 1 is the default Ethernet VLAN. Cisco Discovery Protocol, CDP, and VLAN Trunking Protocol, VTP, advertisements are sent on VLAN 1. The Catalyst 29xx IP address is in the VLAN 1 broadcast domain by default. The switch must be in VTP server mode to create, add, or delete VLANs. This is not true. Switch could be in VTP transparent mode. VTP will be discussed in a moment. Rick Graziani at Cabrillo.edu. Creating VLANs. Assigning access ports, non-trunk ports, to a specific VLAN. Switch config #interface fast Ethernet 09. Switch config if #switch port access VLAN_number. Create the VLAN. This step is not required and will be discussed later. Switch #VLAN database. Switch VLAN #VLAN_number. Switch VLAN #exit. Rick Graziani at Cabrillo.edu. Creating VLANs. Assign ports to the VLAN. Default VLAN 1. VLAN 10. Default VLAN 1. Assign ports to the VLAN. Switch config #interface fast Ethernet 09. Switch config if #switch port access VLAN 10. Access denotes this port as an access port and not a trunk link. Later. Rick Graziani at Cabrillo.edu. Creating VLANs. Default VLAN 1 VLAN 300 Default VLAN 1 Rick Graziani at Cabrillo.edu. Configuring ranges of VLANs. Configuring ranges of VLANs. VLAN 2 Sydney switch config hashtag interface fast Ethernet 05 Sydney switch config if hashtag switch port access VLAN 2 Sydney switch config if hashtag exit Sydney switch config hashtag interface fast Ethernet 06 Sydney switch config hashtag interface fast Ethernet 07 Rick Graziani at Cabrillo.edu. Configuring ranges of VLANs. Configuring ranges of VLANs. VLAN 3 Sydney switch config hashtag interface rung fast Ethernet 08 fast Ethernet 012 Sydney switch config if hashtag switch port access VLAN 3 Sydney switch config if hashtag exit. This command does not work on all 2900 switches, such as the 2900 series XL. It does work on the 2950. Rick Graziani at Cabrillo.edu. Creating VLANs. Sydney switch config hashtag interface fast Ethernet 01 Default VLAN 1 VLAN 300 Default VLAN 1 Sydney switch config hashtag interface fast Ethernet 01 Sydney switch config if hashtag switch port mode access Sydney switch config if hashtag exit. Note, the switch port mode access command should be configured on all ports that the network administrator does not want to become a trunk port. This will be discussed in more in the next chapter, section on DTP. Rick Graziani at Cabrillo.edu. Creating VLANs. This link will become a trunking link unless one of the ports is configured with as an access link, i.e. switch port mode access. Default, dynamic desirable. By default, all ports are configured as switch port mode dynamic desirable, which means that if the port is connected to another switch with an port configured with the same default mode, or desirable or auto, this link will become a trunking link. See my article on DTP on my website for more information. When the switch port access VLAN command is used, the switch port mode access command is not necessary since the switch port access VLAN command configures the interface as an access port, non-trunk port. This will be discussed in more in the next chapter, section on DTP. Rick Graziani at Cabrillo.edu. Verifying VLANs, show VLAN. Verifying VLANs, show VLAN. VLAN 1 default. VLAN 2. VLAN 3. Rick Graziani at Cabrillo.edu. Verifying VLANs, show VLAN brief. Verifying VLANs, show VLAN brief. VLAN 1 default. VLAN 2. VLAN 3. Rick Graziani at Cabrillo.edu. VLAN database commands. VLAN database commands. Optional command to add, delete, or modify VLANs. VLAN names, numbers, and VTP, VLAN trunking protocol, information can be entered which may affect other switches besides this one. Discussed later. This does not assign any VLANs to an interface. Switch hash VLAN database. Switch VLAN hash. VLAN database editing buffer manipulation commands. Abort exit mode without applying the changes. Apply current changes and bump revision number. Exit apply changes, bump revision number, and exit mode. No negate a command or set its defaults. Reset abandon current changes and reread current database. Show database information. VLAN add, delete, or modify values associated with a single VLAN. VTP perform VTP administrative functions. Rick Graziani at Cabrillo.edu. Deleting VLANs. Switch config if hashtag no switch port access VLAN underscore number. Rick Graziani at cabrillo.edu